What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Okay, let me just say that this idea isn't exactly mine. I was inspired to make this from a couple of other videos. I've seen some basketball ones, some soccer ones, and I decided, you know what? No one actually made a wrestling version of this, at least from what I know, because maybe someone did. But yeah, in this video, I'm just going to look at Bret Hart's career and just critique him. Like, try to grade him on a scale of 1 to 10 of just how good he is. In my opinion, keyword my opinion, because you guys, everyone has different opinions, so yeah. Once again, not my idea, I was inspired to make this. If this video is successful, I will definitely make it on other guys. Not necessarily guys that are currently wrestling, because that would be ridiculous. But guys that were actually retired for a while, like for example, some random ones, like Charlie Haas. Ricky Steamboat is someone I really want to make a video on too. Can make one on Randy Savage. Yeah, this is the series. We just look at wrestlers, their careers, and we just grade them on how they were. Like, from their character, their in-ring skills, their charisma, their mic skills, all that. And at the end, we look at the accomplishments and we decide, you know, let's rank them from a scale of 1 to 10. Who knows? I might even make a video on Hornswoggle next. Okay. It is often said that Bret Hart is one of the greatest wrestlers in modern history, and it wouldn't be crazy to call him the greatest ever. Why? Well, first of all, look at his accomplishments. 5-time WWF champion, 2-time Intercontinental champion, 2-time Tag Team champion, 2-time Tag champion, 4-time WCW United States champion, 2-time WCW World champion. So, the accomplishments speak for themselves. But as an overall performer, how great was Bret Hart? Now, for those of you that aren't really knowledgeable about Bret, let me give you a description. Okay. Bret Hart, as you may know, was the son of the legendary wrestler Stu Hart, and wrestling was in his blood from early on. I mean, he had 11 siblings, so obviously wrestling was always going to be around. Eventually, Bret was inspired to become a wrestler. His father trained him in the legendary Hart Dungeon, and during training, Stu didn't even take it easy on his son. He treated him like everyone else in the dungeon, and so Bret was in for basically torture. I mean, the stories I've heard about the Hart Dungeon, God, what can I say? Nonetheless, Hart graduated from the dungeon and began competing in his father's promotion, Stampede Wrestling. But before he did, he competed as an amateur wrestler in high school, and the Hitman was pretty good. He wrestled in college, I believe, too, and despite being talented, Bret opted to quit amateur wrestling due to the lingering injuries, and he found it to be unrewarding. So Bret wrestled in his father's promotion, Stampede Wrestling. It was here where Bret made a name for himself. I watched his documentary a couple of months ago, and initially he was a jobber. He received a ridiculous amount of punishment in his early matches. He was getting his ass kicked. He was selling his ass off, everything. Eventually, he rose up the ranks of his father's promotion, and by the time of his departure, Hart captured the NWA International Tag Team Championships on 5 occasions, the North American Heavyweight Championship on 3 occasions, and eventually, Bret and a couple of other guys, including the Dynamite Kid, caught the eye of World Wrestling Federation, and so they were signed in 1984. Upon his arrival, Hart was asked to be a cowboy, but that didn't happen. I mean, could you just imagine Cowboy Bret Hart? Instead, he was paired with Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and the duo were known as the Hart Foundation. The duo complemented each other well. Hart was a technical wrestler that wasn't that good at promos, while the Anvil was a brawler, and he actually knew how to cut a promo. Jimmy Hart was also their manager, and he was certainly capable of speaking, so they were good. The reason why they formed was because Bret had grown frustrated with his position in the Fed, and this was his last resort. In a recent interview, Hart said that he blew his tryout match, and so the Hart Foundation was a way of not worrying about Bret. The team surpassed Vince's expectations, and they became one of the greatest tag teams ever. Bret and Jim captured the titles for the first time in February of 1987, and eventually the duo turned face, and I believe this was because Bret Hart threw a fit in light of Bad News Brown turning on him during a battle royal at WrestleMania 4. If I remember correctly, he was so damn pissed, they decided to break that trophy in half and throw it away. Jim Neidhart then followed him, so they were good guys. They got rid of Jimmy Hart, and they feuded with the likes of Demolition and the Nasty Boys. By the end of their run, the Foundation had won 2 titles, and at this point, they had run their course. Like, that was it. What more could they do in the tag team division? They faced all the guys, the Rockers, Demolition, Nasty Boys. There was no one left for them to feud with, basically. Around this time period, the WWF saw something in Bret. The Pink and Black Attack had gained experience under his belt, and at this point, he was one of the best in-ring performers in the entire company. His first major match as a singles competitor came at SummerSlam 1991 against Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. Personally, I'd say this is the match where Bret Hart became a star. I just watched it last week, and the story they told, it was impeccable. I believe Mr. Perfect had a broken back. Kurt Hennig was jumping around like a grasshopper. It was fun, and if you've never seen it before, If you've never watched it, please do. In the end, Hart made Hennig tap out to the sharpshooter to become the new Intercontinental Champion inside Madison Square Garden. It was like a star-making performance, and at this point, the fans definitely loved Hart, and right when his music played, they'd be shouting. But this wasn't the match that truly made Bret a star, in my opinion. I personally believe it was the match. It was WrestleMania 8 against Roddy Piper for the Intercontinental Championship. So, little context, Hart wasn't champion at this point. He had lost and Piper eventually recaptured the gold. I believe it was from the Mountie. I forgot who exactly. And the story of this one was simple. Piper was treating Bret like a little kid because he knew his family. He was a good friend to the Harts. But the Hitman wasn't taking it lightly. He didn't want to be treated like a child. During the match, Piper contemplated going back to his old ways and cheat to win, but he didn't. And Bret capitalized on Piper's judgment call by rolling him up. Oh, and this match featured a lot of blood, and during this era of the WWF, that wasn't happening much. The ending was definitely from Bret's mind, as in the future he actually used it a couple of times. But yes, tremendous story there, the match, everything was awesome. I'd say this was the moment Bret Hart became a big star. Okay, during this time period, the steroid scandal rocked the WWF, and the climate of the entire company was flipped on its head. They were no longer pushing the muscular guys like Hogan and Warrior. Instead, they focused on the smaller guys such as Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. After having what was probably the greatest SummerSlam match in history against Davey Boy Smith, Bret Hart was once again titleless. But not for long, as a couple of weeks later, Vince called Bret into his office and told him that he's winning the World Wrestling Federation's most coveted prize. On October 11th, 1992, Bret Hart captured the WWF Championship. Now that he was on top of the mountain, Bret was out to prove that he was one of the best champions. He accepted any and everyone's challenge. It didn't matter if it was the Mountie or Shawn Michaels, all you had to do was just ask. He even gave Virgil a title shot. He went through every one of them, and this made him look legit in the fans' eyes, and it was a nice breath of fresh air. And while many seen Bret as a poor promo during this time period, that area would eventually be worked on. Not as a babyface though. Heading into WrestleMania 9, Bret was on fire. They put him in there, and he manages to tell a story with nearly everyone, but then this guy got in the way. Bret was originally going to retain the title against Yokozuna and continue to be the champion, but Hulk was worried, I guess. At least this is what I found. He was worried Bret would be a big star, perhaps on the same level as him, and so WWE wouldn't really need him, and they wouldn't rely on him anymore. Okay, so the story goes. Hogan convinced boss man Vince to make him champion. Looking back, that's annoying. Adding to the fact Hogan didn't want to face Bret at SummerSlam and pass the torch, yeah, like it's messed up. I personally believe Bret would have been an even bigger star had there been that match. Hogan, he doesn't like losing to a non-friend or someone smaller than him, and Hogan's burials, this wasn't a burial, it's another story. After this, Hart competed in the upper mid-card scene. He had one of the best performances ever at King of the Ring 1993, as he faced 3 different wrestlers and had 3 different matches, and they were all great. He faced Razor in the quarterfinal, Mr. Perfect in the semifinal, and then Bam Bam Bigelow in the final. It was one of a kind. What can I say? How do you have 3 different matches that were actually good in the same night within like 2 hours? And so he was the first official King of the Ring. They already had it previously, but this is the yearly one. Despite not being in the title picture, the Hitman had this really great feud with Jerry the King Lawler. This was all about who was the true king of the WWF. Eventually led to Hart's family getting involved, and this was also when Bret's feud with his brother Owen began. Owen grew jealous of Bret's success, and so he wanted to make a name for himself at his brother's expense. Initially, it was going to be Bruce Hart who was going to feud with Bret, but the Hitman himself preferred his younger brother. This led to both men facing off at WrestleMania 10, and heading into the event, Bret actually won the Royal Rumble along with Lex Luger, which meant he was set to go double duty. They had an exceptional match, which to many, including myself, is seen as Owen's best match in the WWF. They were outsmart each other with traditional wrestling. It was a classic in every sense, and up to this point, it was probably the best WrestleMania match ever, barring Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage. In the end, the Rockets outsmarted the Hitman with a roll-up to win this match, and it really benefited him. It really elevated him to become a star in the World Wrestling Federation. Despite the loss, it wasn't Bret who was frustrated, as it was Owen who was frustrated at the end of the night, as the Hitman captured his second WWF Championship in a match against Yokozuna. The fans wanted Bret to be champion, and after a year of Hulk Hogan, a failed Lex Luger push, I guess it was all worth it in the end. And that picture of Owen gets me. He was out to destroy his brother's night, but it ended up being a great night for his brother. So basically accomplished nothing. Like, sure, you beat him, but who's the champion right now? After capturing the WWF Championship, the Hitman was given a new theme song. You guys obviously know which one I'm talking about. I mean, it's the legendary one. Bret Hart, along with Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Razor Ramon, and Diesel, led the new generation era of the World Wrestling Federation. By the way, this title reign is memorable for the feud with Owen Hart, and those two faced off in a legendary steel cage match at SummerSlam 1994. Heading into the event, Owen made Jim the Anvil Neidhart turn on Bret, and those mind games didn't work out for him. By the way, there's actually a picture and even a video of Owen holding the WWF title. It's not that one, by the way. With that said, the family drama between both men was truly entertaining, and eventually I will go in depth on it. Now, despite the feud ending, Owen managed to stick it to Bret by playing a facade at Survivor Series. A little context. So the Hitman defended the title against Bob Backlund, right? Well, Backlund locked him in the crossface chicken wing, and after a long amount of time locked in the hold, Bret didn't want to give up. So Owen, who felt bad for his brother, convinced his mother to throw in the towel. The moment that bell rang, Owen was like, oh no, what's happening to my brother? He's getting choked out. But then ding, 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 and he's running to the back ecstatic because he once again got one over his brother. The feud between Bret and Backlund continued into WrestleMania, where they faced off in an I Quit match. Anyways, it was Bob who shouted I Quit for the first time in his career, although he didn't really shout it. And the Hitman was back to feuding with Jerry Lawler. He called that WrestleMania 11 match the worst pay-per-view match of his career, by the way. Now, the reason why Bret wasn't in the title picture was because Diesel was champion. They're trying to push him hard as the new face of the company. As for Jerry Lawler, he faced him in a Kiss My Foot match, which Bret won, and then Jerry brought his dentist to the WWF, and he seems familiar, right? Well, that came for those of you that don't know, although I highly doubt there's no one that knows this. Hart dealt with both men before shifting his focus to the WWF Championship. The Hitman managed to win the title against Diesel at Survivor Series, and despite being victorious, Bret was on the receiving end of 2 powerbombs, which basically started Diesel's heel turn. Okay, this title reign, I guess it's memorable. I'd say it's memorable, although it wasn't really that memorable. Hart once again main evented WrestleMania, but this time he was set to face Shawn Michaels in a 60-minute Iron Man match. The story of this one, Bret was really confident in his abilities. He truly believed he was the very best wrestler. As for Shawn Michaels, they made him seem like an underdog of sorts, the young guy that just wants to achieve his boyhood dream. The match itself, I watched it recently and it was good, but I felt like there was not that much action. It wasn't until the final 3 minutes that things started to happen. There's only a couple of things throughout the match that I actually remember. Other than that, I remember Michaels hit a crossbody. He super kicked one of the ring announcers, if I remember. Yeah, Bret was working on his shoulder earlier on, and that's it. That's all I remember. Anyways, Bret lost the title in sudden death overtime as the boyhood dream came true. After WrestleMania, Bret went on hiatus, and by the looks of it, he was missed. The WWF relied on Shawn Michaels, and while in my opinion, it wasn't his fault that the buy rates were down, he was to blame. Although house shows were a much bigger draw with HBK as champion, at least that's what I heard. Upon Bret's return, he was thrusted straight into a feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Long story coming soon, but short story, this feud really established Stone Cold Steve Austin. Bret's character was still the same after the return, but Stone Cold really pissed Bret off, and his morals, they changed. Like he said in a promo, the WWF was horrendous. The motto in Bret's eyes was, you scratch my back and I'll stab yours, during 1997. It seemed like this new era was bringing out the absolute worst in Bret Hart, and at WrestleMania 13, he showed his true colors. Despite making Austin pass out to the sharpshooter, he still wanted to inflict damage. After this, he was the biggest whiner yet rational guy in the company. He reconciled with Owen and Bulldog as he forced them to settle their differences. He made it with both men, and damn, one of Bret Hart's best promos in the WWF and in his entire career. Like, it comes straight from the heart, basically. He settled a 3-year issue with his brother, and now they were out to clean. The WWF, Brian Pillman and Jim Neidhart joined them, and they were collectively known as the new Hart Foundation. Okay, this group was fun. They're up there with some of the best. I will definitely cover their run right when I make the Rise of Austin video. Also, the amount of factions in the WWF at that time was ridiculous. Like, they had to name Survivor Series 97 Gang Rules. Anyways, Bret captured his 5th and final WWF Championship at SummerSlam 1997, and for me, this is his best run. Well, my favorite. I don't know if it's the best. It wasn't really because of the matches, it was more of the character work and the stories. Unfortunately, though, this run was cut short as the WWF couldn't honor Bret's 20-year contract, so he began negotiating with WCW, and we all know the screw job. I don't even need to mention it. So, Bret, after this, he was on very, very bad terms with Vince. After leaving the WWF, Bret debuted at Starrcade 97 during the botched main event. Okay, this is a moment where Bret's career took a turn, although I'd say that Montreal was the beginning. WCW, they decided to have Bret debut like this. Like, out of everything they could have had him do, they did this. Like, the hottest free agent doesn't even have an extravagant debut. Come on. Just after a couple of months later, they turned him heel in order to join the NWO, except he didn't join, he was an associate, and this was after he was out to fight the NWO. Like, it's so confusing in a way. One moment he was a heel, the next he was a face, 2 seconds later he's a heel, and it was a botched run. The number one thing they should have done, in my opinion, was have him face Hulk Hogan, but that didn't happen because Hogan didn't want it to happen, so yeah. And when they did face off on Nitro, it was horrendous. Basically, long story short, WCW didn't have a spot for Bret as a main eventer initially. His best moment was probably on the March 29th, 1999 episode of Nitro when he fooled Goldberg. The Hitman received the spear, but it was he who got up as he was wearing some protection. He was wearing a steel plate. Other than that, his run in late 1999 after Owen's tragic death, like, it was decent. It wasn't bad. It seemed like Bret was motivated once again. They pushed him. He had great matches with the likes of Chris Benoit. He was the champion. The main focus was on him. And just when things were getting interesting, the kick ended everything. At Starrcade 1999, Bret Hart faced Goldberg in a main event which saw Goldberg kick Bret Hart right in the head. This eventually led to Hart's retirement, but we also gotta mention some other stuff. That wasn't exactly what retired Bret Hart. He literally faced Terry Funk in a hardcore match a couple of weeks later, and this match certainly didn't help his concussions either. He had a couple of matches after, like the Goldberg match, including that one that I mentioned, and that's what's to blame. I mean, Goldberg, he did concuss Bret, but that wasn't exactly what retired him in my opinion. His final match came on the January 10th, 2000 episode of Nitro when he faced fellow NWO member Kevin Nash. He was WCW champion then, and so the belt was vacated after his retirement. A series of concussions led to Hart's retirement, long story short. I'd say the Goldberg one did affect him, but maybe he could have returned had he just took a break afterwards. It's unfortunate that Bret's career ended with a forgettable match, but hey, he got one over Goldberg in one of his final appearances, so there's that. Anyways, Hart was released in October, and soon after he retired. It was an unfortunate end to one of the greatest wrestlers' career. Had he stuck around, maybe, just maybe, and the thought of this is so damn unrealistic, maybe Hart could have been a part of the invasion. But then again, maybe he would have wrestled in Ring of Honor or early TNA. Eventually, Hart slowly began to reconcile with Vince. They partnered up for the Hitman DVD in 2005, and Bret was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. 4 years later, on the January 4th, 2010 episode of Raw, Bret Hart finally returned to the WWE. Let's critique Bret Hart as a complete package right now. Okay, first of all, let's look at Hart's character. The Hitman was not one to cheat, to maliciously hurt his opponent. No, he was a good sport that was all about respect. He prided himself in being the very best but doing good at the same time. Over time, though, Hart's character changed. He turned on America, and while he was a heel, he was the biggest crybaby ever, but this was only in the US. If Bret visited Mexico, Germany, France, or even his home country, Canada, he was the same exact guy we've seen previously. He just had an issue with America. Bret's charisma compared to the very best is weak, but there was definitely a reason why people wanted to see him. Like, when you see the guy wearing pink glasses and the leather jacket, you're like, damn, this guy's pretty cool. And he could back it up in the ring, so yeah, maybe... So there is something there that people saw in Bret to say, like, this guy's cool. The Hitman on the mic was weak, to be honest, and it wasn't until 1997 when he finally mastered the art of the mic as a heel. He had every right to turn on the fans, and those promos were so damn entertaining. I'd personally rate the Hart Foundation story as one of my favorites ever. It's just compelling, and everything about it was great. Those promos, the matches, the story, everything. I love that. We gotta make that real soon. Inside the ring, and this is Bret's biggest strength, this is the thing he's best at. Bret is probably second to none. The matches he was in are still spoken about to this day, and with good reason. His wrestling style was, simply put, he always had intentions. He had awesome psychology. Either he was building for the sharpshooter or he was trying to knock down that big guy. And sure, he is known as the original master of the 5 moves of doom, but that doesn't discredit the story he tells in the ring. He wasn't flashy, he was out to win the match. He was consistent, and also, what's so bad about having 5 significant moves? All the top guys have their own moves. He did have more tricks in his pocket, though. It wasn't like those 5 moves were the only thing he used in the match. Those were just his go-to moves, the moves he mastered. Also in the ring, it didn't matter if he was in there with Yokozuna, Virgil, Stone Cold Steve Austin. There was going to be something different. So for this one, out of all the top guys in ring, Bret is in the top 5 in my opinion. As for the complete wrestler, it depends on your opinion. I'd say in modern wrestling, top 10. He was exceptional, and sure, compared to the very best, he was weak on the microphone and on the charisma side. But Bret makes up for it with his character and storytelling inside the ring. As for his drawing power, compared to the other guys, once again, low. Well, whenever business was bad, Diesel, Shawn Michaels. Vince placed the title on Bret, so he was the safe one, I guess. For Bret Hart, I'd rank him from a scale of 1 to 10 of 4 out of 10. Yeah. Seriously, though, 9 out of 10, I'd say. I mean, his microphone skills if he was exceptional on the microphone, he probably would have been the GOAT in many's eyes. But yes, that's the one thing that was hurting him. Other than that, and a little bit of the charisma thing, yeah, he's one of the best ever. But Bret Hart 97, he gives a run for anyone's money. 9 out of 10 in my opinion for Bret the Hitman Hart. He belongs on anyone's top 10 best wrestlers list in my opinion. Yeah, top 10 in my opinion. Bret Hart belongs on everyone's list. Doesn't matter where you rank him, but he's got to be there in my opinion. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a pile drive on the like button and perhaps a sharpshooter on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.